I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Plan Commission meeting to order. Let the record reflect it is Thursday, November 19th, 2020 at 7:01 p.m. This is Chairman Gray speaking. Before we get started, I would like to ask that anyone joining us remotely to please mute your phones. Thank you. For those wishing to follow along with the PowerPoint, you are encouraged to access the meeting through Tinley Park Television on YouTube. It is my understanding that all members and staff present have checked in on the conference line, and we can begin our meeting. Please note, throughout the meeting, we expect to have other individuals joining us via phone pertaining to specific agenda items. Thank you in advance for your patience and cooperation through tonight's Plan Commission meeting, which is convening remotely via conference call. This open meeting of the Village of Tinley Park is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-07, issued on March 16, 2020, which suspends the Open Meetings Act provisions relating to in-person attendance by members of a public body. The Open Meetings Act, OMA, requires public bodies to allow for public comment. Therefore, this meeting will include public comment via the established protocol. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by web or audio conference. Let's go over some ground rules. We are all getting used to working and meeting remotely, so I do not feel it is necessary to go over the protocols again. Please just remember to wait until I address you, and please keep your phones muted, and when you do speak, please identify your name. Thank you. At this time, I would ask the Commission's Secretary, Bennett, to please call the roll.
Engel, Manny, Gatto,
Present.
West,
Present.
Gaskell,
Present.
Aitchison,
Here.
Vic,
Yeah.
Chairman Gray.
Yes, here. Staff, this is Chairman Gray. Staff, at this time, are there any communications for the Commission?
No, there are not, except the certified mailings that I think you'll notice when you come to the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Paula. This is Chairman Gray again. Let us now begin with the approval of the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 1st, 2020 meeting?
This is Commissioner Gatto, so moved.
Commissioner Vick, I second the motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Vick. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Okay, we'll move on to item 1. The first item on tonight's agenda is a workshop and public hearing to consider recommending that the Village Board grant IBD Corp., the contract purchaser of property owned by Hendricks Commercial Properties, a special use permit to allow Level 2 open storage on the property located at 17201 Ridgeland Avenue. The request will permit Elfie Wall Systems to store finished product that is ready to be shipped in an area measuring 200 feet by 25 feet on the south side of the building. The area will be enclosed by a fence. Site plan and final plat approval will also be considered this evening. Since this is a workshop and a public hearing, we will begin the workshop presentation by staff. So staff, please present your report at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Garrett. Good evening, everyone. As the chairman mentioned, we'll first be handling the workshop for this project. It is located at 17201 Ridgeland Avenue. That's the former ABC Roofing Supply building, located at the southeast corner of Oak Forest Avenue and Ridgeland Avenue. ABC occupied this site from 1993 to 2018, and it's been vacant ever since. It was actually constructed in 1962, and at that time, many of the current zoning regulations that we're used to were not yet in existence. Panduit occupied the area to the south. They own the property most of the property that wraps around this subject property, except the one immediately to the east. And as probably most of you know, it has, they've demolished most of those buildings except for the one in the very southeast corner. Barb, I don't know if you've advanced the slide to the pictures yet or not,
Yes.
but it's not, it's probably lagged behind on mine. So that just shows you a picture of the existing site. If we could go to the next slide. The property is 3.58 acres, and the building that's there is approximately 37,767 square feet. There are two overhead doors that front onto Ridgeland Avenue. And as I mentioned, this was constructed prior to a lot of our regulations, so they have pavement running right up to the property line on the east and on the west sides of the building. There's also an access drive to the south that connected with the Panduit property. Let's move on to the next slide. That one just shows you that there is perimeter fencing around the property, although actually that's not correct. I just realized that now, the red dashed line, so disregard that. Let's go on to zoning and nearby land uses. Next graphic. The property is currently zoned ORI, and as is the property to the east and to the south. To the west, we have R4 single family and R6 medium density residential. The property surrounding this property, owned by Panduit, we have been meeting with the potential developers for over a year, and we anticipate proposals coming in this year for a residential development, even though it's currently zoned ORI. So despite that existing zoning, the village's long-term vision for that area is residential. And I think I mentioned to the north, we have R4, I think I mentioned that, that's single family, that's across Oak Forest Avenue. We can move to the next slide regarding the site plan. So, and I think this was evident in Chairman Garrett's, I keep calling you Chairman Garrett, I'm sorry, Chairman Gray. Chairman Gray's reading of the agenda. The purpose of the meeting is this open storage level 2 area that requires a special use. And as part of that, we also need to approve the site plan. So the first thing under site plan we're going to talk about is the parking and the site circulation. For this use, industrial use, the requirements are not that high. It's one space for every 2 employees plus one space for each vehicle. They do plan on up to 25 employees on the site, and they have 1 service vehicle. So their requirement per the code is only 14 parking spaces. They have, I believe it's 19 parking spaces right now. So they have adequate parking on the outside of the fenced-in area, but they also have room within the fenced area as well. I mentioned in the staff report that a dimension site plan had not been provided, but since the printing of your staff reports, we have received a site plan. And if we want to move on to the next slide, that is the final site plan. And you'll see that there are 16 parking spaces along the west side, plus 2 accessible parking spaces. It also outlines in green the fenced-in area. The open storage area that's the subject of the special use is immediately south of the building. And then in the southeast corner, a space 60 feet by 125 is where employees and service vehicles can park. So the first open item we had, the first one was that we needed to have a dimension site plan. We do have that now, so we do not have to condition our approval on that. But we also need to see that parking lot restriped, and the parking blocks that are there right now are in real poor condition. So we'll need to see those replaced since there's no curb around the edge of that parking area. So there are two issues that staff is recommending be a condition of your approval this evening, and that is the restriping of the parking lot in accordance with code regulations for dimensions, and the replacement of the parking block. Turning radiuses have been provided for delivery as well as fire trucks. We've sent them over to the fire department. I haven't heard back from them, but I would recommend that we condition any approval on final engineering approval that those turning radiuses work. Okay. And then if we go to the next slide, Barb, that is just regarding that south access drive. I've spoken to the applicant about that, and they're aware that that south access drive needs to be removed and replaced with, it's probably stone now, I'm assuming, I don't know, or asphalt. They'll need to replace that so that there can be a growing medium for grass in that area. So that's the site planning issues regarding parking and circulation. The next issue is regarding screening, if you want to go to the next slide. The first one is the fence. There is a fence that encloses kind of the rear parking or rear, I guess, staging area or storage area. Right now it's a 6-foot chain link fence with privacy slats, and there is barbed wire on the top of that. As I mentioned, a lot of this was constructed prior to our codes, and our codes right now do not allow privacy slats, nor do they allow barbed wire. Any kind of open storage area has to be completely screened by 100% opaque fence, either at least 6 foot, so it could be 6 or 8 feet in height. The applicant has agreed to remove the barbed wire immediately and then work on replacing that fence in a phased manner. The west side is the most visible. It's right across the street from the residential area and has frontage there on Ridgeland Avenue. So we felt that that was the highest priority. So they've agreed to replace that with a conforming fence by December 1st, 2021. The south and east sides, interestingly, the south fence is not even theirs. It belongs to Panduit. So if at any time Panduit removes that fence, they're going to have to replace that to come into compliance. And the east fence has areas of repair, needing repair as well, and that was noted in the change of owner inspection. Although luckily the area that needs to be repaired is fairly far south from visibility off of Old Forest Avenue. So they've agreed to replace the south and the east fence at such time as the property develops adjacent to this area. And as I mentioned, we have some developers looking at that area now, or within 5 years, which is December 1st, 2025, whichever comes first. So this is a recommendation that you place this as a condition of your approval. And that's open item number 4. We want to move on to the next section on landscaping. I have gotten an updated landscape plan, and after receiving a couple revisions, the plan that they have provided me is in conformance with the intent of the ordinance. As you know, buffer yards are required along the perimeter, and they do not have the land to provide a buffer yard on the west or the east. They do have enough land to the south as well as to the north. So it was staff's recommendation to make up for the inadequacy of buffering on both the east and the west side, that they add 20% onto the buffer requirements for south and north, and they've done that. So the plan that's been submitted has been approved by staff. They have agreed to install that landscaping by next summer, June 15th, 2021. That was open item number 5. So we're recommending that you place that deadline as your condition. So those are the site planning issues: parking, circulation, landscaping, and screening. Let's move on to proposed use and special use permit. The next slide. Again, the subject of the public hearing we're going to be having next is regarding the open storage. IBD Corporation, and I know the owner, Mr. George Podrovic, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, is on the call. And he is the president of Elfie Wall Systems, who is a contract purchaser of the property. They currently operate out of a place at University Park, and they're looking to move here to expand their building, expand their business. If any of you had time to go online to the reference that I mentioned in the staff report, very interesting what he has done. He has created a new wall system, and actually one of our projects that is under construction, a large project, a large multifamily project here in town, is using this wall system. According to his website, this new Elfie wall system can experience energy savings of up to 40 to 60%. So it's quite impressive, and we wish him very much luck in his new venture here. So he's going to be moving out of his University Park location and coming here and adding between 15 and 25 new employees. He's stated that 15 to 20 of them will work in the shop and 3 to 5 will work in the engineering department. As with all operations in an ORI, they must be conducted wholly enclosed within the building, and the only options on that is through the various levels of open storage. Now, level 1 open storage does not require any special use, and that's any kind of vehicle that's over 8,000 pounds. But there are considerations that I'll go over here in a minute on any kind of outdoor storage that we need to make sure, whether it's level 1 or level 2, that the applicant is meeting that. The only vehicle that Alfie has mentioned that they're going to be storing on site is a pickup truck. So that's under the 8,000 pounds. They do, however, have some product as they manufacture their product. Now, none of the raw product, any of the incoming product to be included as part of their fabrication processes, all that would be stored inside. But as they finish one of the wall components, they want to store that outside. And that is what that 25 by 200 square foot area is on the outside. The way they've explained it to me is once those are stored and they're stored flat, it can go up to 11 feet 2 inches. So it would extend above the 6-foot fence that exists now, and any new fence, I'm not sure they have the option of going with a 6 or an 8-foot fence, but even with an 8-foot fence, it would still extend above that. So that's something I certainly would like to have the commission discuss. I think there might be options for them to store that at a lesser height, but we'll let them discuss that. They do not anticipate having that product out there for any great length of time. What they have told me is between 2 and 3 weeks until a delivery vehicle comes and picks it up. The order's complete and they can send it off to its destination. As I mentioned, with any open storage, we have certain conditions, one being that it can't be in the front or corner yard, and that's both the level 1 or level 2 storage units are all at the rear of the property, so they meet that requirement. Excuse me. Lot coverage, they cannot exceed 15% lot coverage, and the area that I mentioned for open storage, level 2, is only 5,000 square feet, and the other area down in the southeast corner is only 23,000. So they certainly, I'm sorry, it's only 7,500. So they, neither one of them independently or collectively exceed the 15% of lot coverage, so they are fine there. Screening is probably the biggest issue when we're talking about open storage, and one that we've been probably most strict about in the village. The first is that it has privacy slats and barbed wire, as I mentioned in the site plan section. So they will be removing the barbed wire immediately. And then, as I mentioned, they will be phasing in the construction of the fences, beginning with the western side. Landscaping, and as I mentioned, how we worked with them on that when I discussed it under the site plan section. So they have agreed to get that landscaping in by June 15th. So the open item number 6 is to discuss any screening requirements or concerns you may have, and then certainly look to place that condition of the timing of that fence on the special use. Even though you'll be doing that on the site plan as well, we'd like to see it placed as a condition on the special use. The third item beyond site plan and special use is lot consolidation. There are actually 3 parcels, even though there are only 2 PIN numbers on this property. So we need to see, just like what we've done with others, kind of a housekeeping issue. We want to make sure that all of these lots are under one single plat. Now, I have not received the plat of consolidation yet. They're working very hard to get that from their surveyor. They certainly know that we can't take this to the village board for approval without it. And that's meetings on December 1st. So we're recommending that you condition final approval of the consolidation plat on final engineering approval. So just in summary, I think we've gone over most of them. The open items are just, as I mentioned, we do have a site plan now, but we do want to see this restriping and replacement of the parking blocks. We want verification from the fire department on the turning radius and the removal of that south access drive. And then we have the timing of the fence with the west side being completed by December 1st, 2021, and the south and east side on the earliest of December 1st, 2025, or then either property to be east or south redeveloped. We talked about landscaping being installed by June 15th, and again, those same being a condition of the special use. And then finally, the final approval of the plat on final engineering review. So that concludes my workshop report, Chairman Gray.
Thank you, Paula. This is Chairman Gray, as you so eloquently put it. Are there any comments from the petitioner at this time? I believe you mentioned George Mordrovic is present.
Yes, and his
Any
attorney is Monica.
Yes, this is Monica Shamas. I just wanted to chime in a little bit on the outdoor storage, just to kind of clarify and echo what Paula was touching on. So anything that we have stored on the outdoor storage area is simply for just putting it out there for delivery. So upon, the product being manufactured, if we do need the overflow, it would go out there, and only for the span of time that it would take essentially a delivery truck to arrive, pick it up and take it. And then touching on how high it is stacked, George has made it abundantly clear he's willing to work with the village on whatever codes they have and abide by all of those. So if, if there is an issue on how high something is stacked, then he's more than amenable to stack it lower. And the good thing is that's something that's not, set in stone. So they are panels. So if it's a matter of making it, 8 feet or 6 feet versus 11 feet, it's just us stacking that a little bit shorter than we were expecting, which isn't a problem at all.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you, Monica. This is Chairman Gray. Are there any other comments from the petitioner at this time?
No,
if not,
I think Monica answered that very good.
Okay. Thank you, George. At this time, I will ask each commissioner to provide comments, starting with Commissioner Gatto.
This is Commissioner Gatto. I guess I just want to make sure that, you know, everything that's in the staff report, I think is great. The PVC fencing, to make sure that some of it is, you know, deterred from the street, since it is directly on that corner right there. So I agree with everything that the staff presented, and I'm welcoming seeing somebody take over that property because it's been seen vacant for so long. So, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gatto. Commissioner Vick, any comments?
Hi, Commissioner Vick. No, I like what the staff's done here. I think they've got some good conditions in here that we definitely need to stick to on this, with replacements of course striping and parking blocks and turning radiuses for fire delivery vehicles. The only thing, and I'm glad to see they're replacing that fence and are going to at least remove the barbed wire right away. Definitely a good thing here, just in safety means. But there should be conditions on that stacking height. I get that, with what they're doing and everything else, they agreed to a 6-foot fence. And I think there should definitely be, maybe having them stack it below that height might be a little much, of course. I would definitely say that 6 would maybe be a minimum, and if a little bit of it was above there, well, it wouldn't be different than a lot of storage in other places, in all honesty, where it does go above the height of their fenced-in areas. But I would definitely have a maximum stacking height for that, and then especially since this stuff is only going to be there temporarily. It's there for a few weeks, it gets picked up. Great, it's not always going to be there. So if it was a little bit above the fence line, even up to the 8 feet, since they said they were willing to put in a new 6-foot fence, I think that would be a pretty good, variance to this here. Other than that, though, I like everything else. I think the landscape stuff is fine, since they are limited on the space they have. Yeah, I think we're good, other than just the stacking height.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Vick. Commissioner West, any comments?
Yeah, I'll just echo what somebody else said about being really glad that something is going in there. I've only lived in Tinley for a short while, but it's been empty the entire time I've lived here. And I know that there was a reference in the staff report to the fact that the adjacent area, kind of in the Panduit area, was the long-term goal was that for that to be residential. But I think the developers have done a good job of making sure that it's going to be sufficiently shielded, and with having the forest preserve property on the other side, I think it's going to fit in really nicely and be a nice addition to the area.
Thank you, Commissioner West. Commissioner Gaskell, any comments?
No comments for me.
Okay. Commissioner Aitchison.
No, I think that staff did an excellent job. I'm in agreement with all of the recommendations. That's pretty much my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Aitchison. At this time, I do have some comments for discussion, and I concur with what Commissioner Vick and West said regarding the fence, and if there's enough space, I know it's 25 by 200. If they're able to, while we're waiting those 2 to 3 weeks, if they have the space to put them down. As Commissioner Vick said, I did like at least a minimum of 6 feet, maybe a little bit over for the maximum, but not too far over. One of my concerns with the stacking, besides the screening, is the fact that south part of the fence is actually on the Panduit's property. My understanding through the staff report is that that is going to be looked at to be developed for residential, and so my understanding is that the petitioner doesn't have control over taking down that south portion of the fence that's on the Panduit property. But my concern is, if and when that does become residential, the open item storage level 1 and level 2, I believe that's conditioned by being in a fenced in location. So if you don't own, or the south portion of the fence is not on your property, and somewhere in the future you need to put a fence, I would say that you're better off doing it now than later. I saw the Alta, and I saw the revised landscaping where it showed the landscaping along the pavement there, but perhaps it'd be more prudent to put a south portion of a fence there so that you have control. Here's what I mean is you're stacking items, and if you are abutting a residential area and all you have between you and the residences are some trees, kids will definitely go there and probably climb on the panels. I'm just saying that from a safety concern, nobody wants anybody to get hurt. So in terms of making sure your lot is secure and your product is secure, not just from damage, but also any sort of lawsuit from somebody trespassing on property, I would think it'd be prudent to put some south portion of the fence on your actual property now, and rework perhaps some of that southern landscaping. Now, I'm just bringing that out there. It may not be an issue right now. I know that I'm not sure what the target is in terms of if it'll ever be a residential to the south. But I'm just saying, I think you should look into potentially doing something that and revising some of the plans. But my other concern with the fence is, and I just want to know, so why exactly are you guys doing it in stages? Like, I understand the west is the priority, as you guys mentioned, and as some of the commissioners mentioned, because of having residential there to screen it from residential. But is there any way you're able to take care of, the barbed wire around all of it's going to come down, but my understanding is if there's 8 feet or longer that's in such disrepair that has to come down, you can't replace it. You have to, just that paneling, you have to replace the fence. So I'm just curious, and I know fences cost money, so I'm sure it's economically based, but can you explain at least the reasoning behind that for the staggering of the fence?
Yeah, so I can chime in. It's Monica Shamas. So essentially to touch on a couple things that you discussed, and if I leave anything out, feel free to remind me. The first portion, we do agree that, yes, once the fence does come down on that southern portion, it would be a liability, especially for children with residential. And that's why that part of the agreement is whichever comes first. So if that fence does come down, then we would replace it on our property. For the time being, the reason why we're not replacing everything, and this kind of phases into your next question, why we're not replacing it now along with the east side if we don't have to is exactly as you named it, financial. So we don't want to front load so many costs before we even get in there. It's more prudent for us to complete everything that is, a complete demand by the village and, a safety thing first. So make sure everything works, and then once we start progressing and we can get more cash flow in, that's when we'll have more of an ability to start making more changes. We did want to make sure, though, that we were trying to make it better for the village in terms of appearance as well. So not only are we changing the gate alongside the west side and doing all the landscaping, we're also going to be repainting the building as well as removing the external ductwork that there is on the building. I don't know if you maybe see it in some of the photos, but we're just trying to make it as good as possible. But when it comes to things like the fencing and things that are a lot more costly, we will have to do in stages just to keep everything within budget.
Chairman Gray, I just might want to add, and I think, Monica, you said this, but I think there's just some confusion. That fence, Chairman, on the south side, even though it's on their property, they can't touch that fence. So when it comes time, if there hasn't been development to the south, and it's 2025, December 1, they have to put up a new fence on their property. So the deadline is 5 years. They have to put up a conforming fence on the south and on the east. So it doesn't really matter that the fence is not on their property. It seems like you were concerned about that. But if Panduit decides to come tomorrow and take that fence down, they are going to be required to put up a fence. because anytime there's open storage, it has to be completely enclosed.
Right. No, I just meant, and I understood, it's on their property, they can't, it's on Panduit's property, they can't touch that. So my thought was, to, before it becomes an issue, cut it off at the pass. However, what Monica said in terms of not, or the aversion to economically front load something, it makes sense to wait until you need to, as well as doing the staging. So I'm okay with that. It sounds like they're going to do some improvements to that building. Anyhow, it's near my house. I see it all the time. So I'm glad that we are getting a new tenant in that building, and it sounds like it's a pretty streamlined and new efficient process that they provide. So it's kind of exciting to have that in our backyard here. With that, my only other comment, I'm glad that staff received the dimension plans, and I am in agreement with make sure you get that plat of consolidation approved by engineering, and I believe it is before the December 1st deadline, if I recall correctly. If that's not correct, please correct me, staff. That's quite all right. But with that said, those are my only comments. My main concern was that I do agree with the recommendations and some of the other comments of our commissioners. So I think it's I am done with my comments on that. So at this time, we will now proceed to the public hearing portion of the meeting. I do want to let everybody know I did receive confirmation of the announcement of the public hearing has been published or had been published. So at this time, I'd like to have a motion to open the public hearing portion of this item.
This is Commissioner Vick, so moved.
Do I hear a second?
This is Commissioner West. I second the motion.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Vick, seconded by Commissioner West. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, motion is carried. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in to speak after the staff's presentation. So staff, at this time, please proceed with your presentation.
I'm not going to repeat everything. I just do want to comment on something I think Commissioner Vick had mentioned. I certainly appreciate his desire to be, I guess, lenient in terms of the stacking, but the code is such that it could not extend above the fence. And I don't know whether they're going to be submitting plans for a 6-foot or 8-foot. So we did not advertise for a variation of that. So my recommendation is not, you'll certainly record his comment as part of the testimony, but we certainly heard Monica mention that George is willing to keep that storage below the fence, whatever it is, 6 or 8 feet, and I think we need to stick with that. Other than that, I don't have any new information beyond what I did 2 minutes ago.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Thanks, Paula. At this time, I'd like to ask the applicant again if they have anything to add. And if you do, let me just speak up, and then I'll have to swear you in.
Yes, this is George. I would like to add just one note, okay, one promise,
Okay.
that we're going to be a good neighbors, okay, good citizens,
Sure.
okay, so we're going to work with you.
Okay, George, I'm just going to ask, so if you want to provide any more, do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. So now speak freely, so you're going to be a good neighbor. I fully expect that. Anything else to add?
Well, we have an exciting new technology, and it has quite a bit of appeal, especially overseas in developing countries. And I think we're going to do exceptionally well in this large area where we can spread out and bring a new computerized machinery which we already purchased. And it is in the box, okay, and we will start training employees on it. in January, mid-January. So I believe that we are going to be very happy in this location. It is not industrial park, which was my first choice, okay, but it's a quiet corner and close to the transportation and high ceiling, so everything is there what we have. And if we can work out those real estate taxes, which were awfully high before we started looking at this property, okay, that would help us to bring the business on a higher level.
Okay. Thank you, George, for your comments, and we do appreciate you moving to Tinley Park to do business. It does sound like an exciting new technology. When I read the staff report, reading about the energy efficiency and the costs and the savings in terms of time of construction for these type of panels, I got pretty excited. I'm an engineer, so I welcome new technology. So thank you for your comments. At this time, I'm going to ask if the staff or the commissioners, if you guys have any further comments or discussion on this item at this time, please speak up now.
This is Commissioner Vick. I had misunderstood some of the stuff earlier, so yeah, definitely. I did not realize the wording on the code when I had made those statements before. So yeah, definitely. They need to keep it below whatever size fence they finally decide to go with.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Commissioner Vick, and I agree. I echoed some of Vick's comments, but thank you for the clarification, Paula. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that everything's within the code. Any other comments from any of the other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask, then, is there anyone else from the public wishing to comment on this item at this time?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Hearing no public comment, we are going to move on. This is Chairman Gray again. So if there's no further questions or discussion, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Commissioner Gaskell, I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Aitchison, I second that motion.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Aitchison. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Staff, will you please present the standards for special use at this time?
Yes, thank you. As with all of our special use standards, we're primarily wanting to make sure that as a consequence of the special use that we're granting, that it doesn't have a negative impact on adjacent properties. And certainly between the fence that we discussed and the landscaping, the applicant is doing what the code requires in terms of screening the outdoor storage area. There are standards related to the adequacy of utilities and roads. This was a pre-developed, this property was developed and operated as a light industrial use for many years. Therefore, those facilities and utilities are all adequate for the proposed use. And the last standard really to mention is whether it contributes directly or indirectly to the economic development of the community. Certainly with the additional employment, the fact that this property has been vacant for 2 years, as many of the commissioners has mentioned, certainly meets the standard that it is going to directly or indirectly contribute to the economic development of the community. And that concludes my standards that we will enter into the record.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Thank you, Paula. At this time, I'd like to have a motion regarding the site plan.
This is Commissioner Gatto. I'd like to make the motion to grant the petitioner, George Madrovic, on behalf of IBD Corporation, contract purchaser, site plan approval for the property located at 17201 Ridgeland Avenue in accordance with plans submitted and listed in the November 19, 2021 staff report and subject to the following conditions. 1, approval of parking spaces, provisions of parking blocks, and restriping of parking spaces prior to issuance of an occupancy permit. 2, verification of adequate turning radius for the fire and delivery trucks. Removal of the south access drive. 4, replacement of non-compliant fence on the west side of the property with a 6 to 8 foot solid PVC fence by December 1st, 2021. Replace the east and south non-compliant fence with 6 to 8 foot solid PVC fence once development occurs on the adjacent property, or December 1st, 2025, whichever comes first. And number 5, installation of approval landscape by plan by June 15th of 2021.
I need to make a correction, and it's my error when I wrote the motion. It's November 19th, 2020 staff report. I'm getting ahead of myself. Can't wait to get out of 2020.
Do I hear a second for that motion?
This is Commissioner Vick. I second that motion.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Vick. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Aitchison,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Gatto,
Yes.
Chairman Gray,
Yes.
I forgot Vic, Commissioner Vic.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion is carried. Now, may I have a motion regarding the special use permit for open storage level 2?
This is Commissioner West, and I would like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant a special use permit to the petitioner, George Modrovic, on behalf of IBD Corporation, contract purchaser, for open storage level 2 for property located at 17201 Ridgeland Avenue, in accordance with the plan submitted and listed on the November 19th, 2020 staff report, and subject to the following conditions. 1, replace non-compliant fence on west side of property by December 1st, 2021 with a 6 to 8 foot solid PVC fence. Replace east and south non-compliant fence with a 6 to 8 foot solid PVC fence once development occurs on the adjacent property, or December 1st, 2025, whichever comes first. And 2, installation of approved landscape plan by June 15th, 2021.
Do I hear a second?
Commissioner Gaskell, I second it.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Gatto,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. This is Chairman Gray. The motion is carried. Now may I have a motion regarding the plat of consolidation?
This is Commissioner Aitchison, and I would like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant approval to the petitioner, George Modrovic, on behalf of IBD Corporation, contract purchaser, for plat of consolidation, of 3 parcels located at 17201 Ridgeland Avenue, in accordance with the plat of consolidation submitted and listed herein, subject to the following conditions. Final engineering approval by the village engineer.
This is Commissioner Gatto. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Aitchison, seconded by Commissioner Gatto. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
West,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Gatto,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. This is Chairman Gray. Motion is carried. So this item will go to the village board on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. George, thank you for your time. You and your attorney, please take note of that December 15th, 2020 date and contact staff to get information on how to attend that meeting. I appreciate your time tonight, and thanks again.
Thank you,
I might make a
everyone. We appreciate it.
correction. I believe that we found a way for this to go on December 1st. I'll have to go back and check, but I'll get back with you, Monica, and let you know.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, George. Okay, this is Chairman Gray. We'll move to the second item on tonight's agenda. It's a workshop to consider recommending that the Village Board grant Frank Bradley of Crana Homes concept site plan approval for the property located at the southwest corner of 80th Avenue and 191st Street, 8001 191st Street, in the Brookside Glen Plant Unit Development. The request, if granted, will allow the petitioner to develop final plans in accordance with the approved concept site plan, which includes the construction of 50 duplex homes comprising 24.5 acres and commercial uses comprising 6.6 acres. Staff, at this time, can you give your presentation?
Thank you, Chairman Gray. This is a little bit unusual step in that we usually, at least since I've been here, we really haven't gone through the extra review of a concept site plan. However, this is part of the Brookside Glen PUD, very large PUD, and actually I don't know how many of you, not all of you certainly on the commission now, was part of the residences at Magnuson, the multifamily development, which is just to the west of this site. And that was met with some controversy, and there was a lot of concern of the neighbors, and I just felt it was prudent that we run this through as a concept first before the applicant spends a lot of money on engineering and architecture on the project. And let's make sure that the concept that he is proposing with respect to land uses is something that can reach approval after review and negotiation with staff. So let's talk about a little bit of history on this project. That first slide just shows you the location. Most of you are probably aware of this. Magnuson, residences of Magnuson, the 144 multifamily units are directly west. This is at the southwest corner of 191st and 80th Avenue. It's a little over 31 acres totally. And it was part of the original PUD, Brookside Glen Planned Unit Development, that was adopted in 1990, and that was a very large PUD, 828 acres. And at that time, as with most PUDs, you come in with sort of a master plan of the area. And not atypical of any PUD, especially one that was done, 30 years ago, as market changes and as housing preferences change. And certainly, as we've all experienced of late, how the retail market and the office market changes, there needs to be a little fluidity in terms of the way that master plan is executed. So Mr. Bradley from Crana Homes, he's been building out in this area in Brookside Glen for 30 years. He's owned this property for 30 years, and he's tried to market it for 30 years for the commercial use that was assigned. Certainly, I'm sure he probably has stories of how this whole Brookside Glen came to be. I'm sure it was a fairly long process for such a large area, that they had hopes of building some great commercial here. This was all before Brookside Marketplace, I suspect, as well. So he's presented, he approached me a couple months ago mentioning that he felt that there was a need for a certain housing type in the village that he hasn't seen developed, and that is a single-family attached duplex unit that would be marketed to the active adult, not restricted to senior only, but the way that it would be designed would certainly be marketed for that with the first floor bedroom. So that's something he wanted to ask the village to consider. He's put together a plan, and he's asked us to consider it, and if the commission is amenable to this concept, again, it's just a concept, he would still need to come back to the entire special use substantial deviation process and, work through all the engineering, architecture, lighting, landscaping issues that we normally see for substantial deviation. So let's go, Barb, to the slide on zoning and nearby land uses. So as you can see on this, the subject property with the star is the B3. Immediately to the east across 80th Avenue is another area of similar size, 30 to 32 acres of B3 as well. And most of you are probably aware, B3 is our most intense commercial zoning district. That's the same zoning district that Brookside Marketplace, for example, is. That area, B3 is where you're going to see most of your commercial uses, hotels, those kinds of uses in a B3 district. West of here, across Magnuson Lane, is the development I mentioned already, the R6 residences. There's four buildings, 36 units in each for a total of 144 dwelling units. To the south, across the street on Greenway, are some existing townhomes under the zoning district of R5. And you have similar land uses east on Greenway. You have R6 and R5 as well. North, directly north of this property across from 191st is actually unincorporated Will County, and it's zoned C6 for commercial. And catty corner in the northeast corner of 191st and 80th is ORI, and most of you are probably aware of the Panduit Corporation building there. This property is also subject to the Urban Design Overlay District, which focuses on keeping parking fields to the side or rear of a building and trying to focus on architecture along the streetscape. So if we want to go to the next slide, Barb, regarding PUDs, I just wanted to give you a little bit of history. It's a old exhibit here. This is part of the annexation and PUD approval for Brookside Glen. And as you can see, even Greenway wasn't thought of going in the design that it is now. But as is typical with sort of sound planning tools, when you're looking at single-family homes, you'll want to buffer that with other more intense multifamily and then maybe less intense commercial on up to intense commercial. So I suspect that's the planners were thinking when they approved this PUD. You'll see where the red circle is. What's happening there, you'll have single family, then it talks about townhomes, which exist now. And then further north, they had proposed office commercial. And then further north of that, right before you get to 191st, they had looked at community shopping. So that was the thought, and it's a sound planning protocol where you look at buffering any uses with single-family homes being the least intense use that we have in town. You look to protect those by surrounding it by by gradually intensifying the land uses. The PUD that was approved in 1990, again, they did this master plan through the PUD process, basically because the PUD provides you that flexibility. It allows you to encourage and work outside the restrictions of our zoning district. And as I mentioned in the staff report, the intent is not to inhibit any innovation of design, and certainly not cause any undue hardship on allowing a parcel to develop to its highest and best use. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because when we think of Mr. Bradley's request and his desire to try to market this for commercial unsuccessful for 30 years, he has come before us with a land use that he feels is the highest and best use, and one that's compatible to the surrounding land uses. Certainly there's a portion of that property that is still attractive for retail, and that would be at the corner of 191st and 80th Avenue. But his contention is that when we look at the housing towards the south, he feels that his duplex unit is a better neighbor than the back end of commercial, which with deliveries and so forth that could happen in a B3 district. If we want to go on to the next slide, Barb, this is the concept plan that Mr. Bradley has presented and is looking for approval. Again, it is just concept, but in doing so, we certainly want to make sure that we're comfortable with the general layout of the streets, that we're comfortable with the access where he is proposing them, certainly that we're comfortable with the proportion of land uses where before it was 100% B3, he's now looking at 80% for residential, 20% commercial. I want to make sure no one, sometimes when you put something, you legitimize something on paper, people think it's more firm than it is. The architect has placed some possible uses on this plan. He's got daycare, bank. None of that is real, and that he does not have a developer for that commercial area. And what he's trying to show is this is the amount of commercial he'd like to have. This is the way he'd like to have a road as a buffer between the residential and the commercial, that he'd like to have the architecture of the buildings for the commercial area dominate the streetscape, just like with the UD, the Urban Design Overlay District would require. So all the parking fields are to the side or to the rear, and where there's possibility, do shared parking. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're just approving this in concept. The way this process will go, this evening you are workshopping this. We will still have a public hearing on this. This is a requirement when we look at any substantial deviation at the concept level. So we will come back and do a public hearing on this. And at that time, it'll be, after we go through the public hearing, we take this to the village board, and if it gets approval at the village board, we'll return back to Plan Commission and run it through the process like you have seen us do for substantial deviations. And again, there'll be a second public hearing process at that time. So let's talk about the proposal that's before you. There are 50 duplex units there, so that's a total of 100 dwelling units. As I mentioned, the ratio has changed from 100% commercial to 20 commercial, 80% residential. And that any future refinements to the site plan would certainly have to respect the Urban Design Overlay District, and we'll have to abide by the landscape ordinance and all the buffer yard requirements, parking requirements, and circulation, but, making sure that we've provided for pedestrian and bicycle circulation and parking. There was earlier plans. I just wanted you to know that staff did work with the applicant and had him make several changes. The very first plan I received had, I think, 4 different access ways onto Greenway on the south side. I felt that was only going to add for additional points of conflict. I wanted to minimize that to just one point of access on Greenway Boulevard, and that is lined up with the road to the south, and I can't remember what the name of that road is right now, but it is lined up to the circled drive for the townhomes. The first proposal that I received also did not wrap the corner with commercial. My concern there was that he certainly was going to try and get a full access on 80th Avenue, but I wanted him to move that access further south to make sure that he had a full access, not just a right in, right out, and that we wrapped that corner in terms of visibility on 191st to be all commercial, and that we maximize the amount of commercial we could get off of this property. Let's talk a little bit about landscaping. I think you have that picture up, or it's the next graphic, Barbara. Just so you understand, again, this isn't a final landscape plan, it's just illustrative, just kind of give you an idea. But those buffer yards around the perimeter will certainly need to meet all the buffer yard requirements. we also wanted to make sure that all these homes are internally oriented, so you're not going to have any driveway coming out directly onto any of the perimeter roadways. So all driveways will be internal, and I think that's an important consideration. So again, the landscape buffer you'll see there, and that's also the same issue for the commercial area. I also wanted to mention, I think I've got it in the next section, under circulation, I mentioned the access points, but we'll also want to make sure they have sidewalks all the way around the development, as well as internally. And you can see some of those illustrated here. Again, this isn't the final design, so we just want to make sure everyone's aware that we're going to prioritize pedestrian and bicycle circulation. If you could move to the next slide, Barb. This is architecture. Again, this is all for concept and illustrative. I think the main point that he wanted to impress upon the commission is that he's looking for a fully brick project or dwelling unit. He wants to include that first floor bedroom, and you know, it's an attractive architecture that I see here, and if most of you are familiar with his work, the developments that he does in Brookside Meadows and Brookside Glen, I think he's earned himself a very positive reputation. So the next section was just an outlining of site plan approval, and these are things that staff looks at when we go over site plans when we're doing our review. And I just wanted to highlight them on any site design. It's certainly where the building and the parking is located, and as I mentioned, we're looking for that to be to the rear of the side so it's consistent with urban development overlay district. Any loading areas are to the rear of the building. Outdoor storage, there has been no outdoor storage identified at this time, and if that is something that they're considering, they would have to go through the same process as Alfie did just in the previous project. We certainly want to impress upon them that we want to have shared parking opportunities and cross-access however that commercial area develops, and I've already mentioned the pedestrian access. So just recap, the public hearing will be coming on December 3rd, but if this is just a concept site plan approval, I would say if you're comfortable with the site plan as it exists now, you might, so it will be part of the public testimony at the public hearing. You'll certainly want to mention what it is that you like or dislike about the proposal, and we'll take it from there. And that's all I have, Chairman Gray.
Okay. Thank you, Paula, for that good presentation. This is Chairman Gray. At this time, I'm going to ask if there's any comments from the petitioner.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, please identify yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. My name's Mark Korinsky. I'm with HKM Architects and Planners, and I'm speaking on behalf of the petitioner, Crane Homes. I'll keep it brief because Paula did a very extensive and thorough staff report, which we appreciate. It saves us from having to talk. Because what we'd really like to do is just hear from you guys. I can get into the weeds as much as you'd like on this, but we've been working with staff. We think that the plan in front of you works well with today's market, and we're here to listen and to take comments and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. At this time, I will ask for any comments from our commissioners. If you're able to clarify stuff, we'll absolutely reach out to you for your thoughts. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Aitchison, any comments or discussion regarding the concept site plan?
I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Commissioner West.
Yeah, I don't think I have any comments at this time. Thanks for the staff presentation.
Okay, Commissioner Gatto.
All right, I do have a couple comments. I think this is a great concept. just being the fact that in the past 6 months I've been looking for ranch-style townhomes for my elderly parents, and there's none in the village, and they'd like to stay in Tinley Park. It's very difficult to find. So I think this is a great concept. Also to the developer, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of something called cottage homes. They're individual homes, and they don't have shared walls, which is another great concept that I've been looking into lately. And I would love to see that area developed with something that seniors can, move from their big, 3,500 square foot houses in Tinley Park to a smaller area where they don't have to do any maintenance or have stairs to climb. I think it's great. Like I said, my parents are, getting up there in age, and they'd like to downsize their house, and they want to be all on one floor and not have to take care of something outside. So I think it's a great fit for the village.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gatto. Great comments. Commissioner Vick.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the overall concept right now, I think it's a good idea. It's definitely a good idea and a positive movement forward here because, it's definitely 30 years ago, we were definitely hoping for more commercial stuff and thought the need would be there for a lot of that. And as things have changed, I'm glad to see that they're looking at this as going, okay, well maybe we can do something else. I think this kind of home would definitely work well in that area with a little bit of maybe close shopping, something maybe, it all depends on, of course, what is developed in that part, in the small little commercial area of this. Overall, I think it's a good idea, and can't wait to see some more details on this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vick. Commissioner Gaskell.
Nothing at this
Comments?
time.
Okay. I do have some comments myself. I do like the concept plan. I think some of our commissioners spoke on that. It does look clean with good buffers. It does fit the area. And what staff indicated in the report about best possible use, taking in consideration that for 30 years, nothing has been developed. And if you look down Harlem and see that big Amazon warehouse, if you don't know, retail has changed dramatically. And so I think this is a good way to have make use of the property. And it, like I mentioned, the design looked clean. I like the circulation. There's, I think, four ways to get in, one from 80th, one from Greenway, and I believe 2 from Magnuson. And I do, as indicated in the staff report, agree with the idea of having the commercial properties along the road there have the parking lot to the sides or to the back. I think it looks very clean. And I do agree, and I'm going to echo what Commissioner Gatto said. I do believe there is a market for bedrooms on the first floor. I know my mother, her whole life, has been averse to stairs, although now she's in a place with stairs, but she prefers having that bedroom on the first floor. And I know she's converting one of the rooms at her current house to have that. And so I think it's a great concept, and we look forward to further discussions on this. At this time, does anybody else have any more comments to add? If not, the public hearing has been scheduled for December 3rd, 2020. And so I would just let you know, Mark, get with staff to coordinate that and how you can attend. It'll be very much like today, where you can call in and do it remotely, I believe. But good luck. This is a good first initial step.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you as we proceed.
Okay. Thanks again for your time tonight. With that, I will go to the good of the order. Staff, do you have any comments for the good of the order?
Just a few. We do have a new commissioner. He was just appointed Tuesday evening, so it was a little quick to have him join us, but I believe he's listening this evening. So welcome, Frank, and I'm probably going to murder your last name, Lusquito. He is an attorney. I haven't seen his resume yet, but I'm sure it's impressive, and we're very happy to have you on board. And I'm sure Kayla will be glad she's not the new girl on the block anymore.
Well, welcome, Frank.
I'll be one of
We
the,
look
I'll be one
forward.
of the old timers.
Yes, of course. Well, welcome, Frank. We look
So-
forward to meeting you.
And then, you know, the last two meetings were canceled, so just bring you up to speed. Lenny's made it through village board, and so I think they got a foundation-only permit on the car wash right now. I did get Pete's for the grocery store came in this week, so I'm having fun reviewing that. So that's going to be coming down the pike here for you in this January workshop. Bricksmore, if you've driven by there, all the construction fences are up. The permit has not been issued, where there's just some fees that need to be paid, and then they're going to be going gangbusters as well. So as much as I'd like to see 2020 over with, sorry about rushing the dates there, you know, the one thing I'd like to comment on is that Tinley stays strong, and we've got some really good developments, interesting things happening downtown. Sad to see some businesses close, but not a lot of shuttering. So thank you for continuing to buy local, and hopefully you're all wearing your mask and you're not going anywhere on Thanksgiving. That's my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I agree with that. Everybody, please stay safe, for sure. At this time, I'd like to receive comments from the public.
No comments.
So, okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If there was any public comments submitted. So, no public comments. Thank you, Barb. So, at this time, I'll move to adjourn the meeting. So, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Commissioner Gaskell, I make the motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
It's Commissioner Vick. I second that motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Vick. I will take a voice vote. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned at 8:17 p.m. Take care, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.